Blog Talk Radio.
Mi chiamo Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, Neye Ojira Da, Medinde Ojira Bo, Kwesi, Radne Pata, Akan, Apamumai Maruka Tipi Mu, Ojira Fo, Ojira Mai Mu. Greetings to all Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut, people, many Africans, black people. Today is Ojira Day, Purification Day. My name is Ojira Fo, Kwesi, Radne Pata, Akan, Ojira Fo of the Akwamu Nation in North America, within Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut, people in the Western Hemisphere. Yet I say we thank you for tuning into the broadcast. We're having this special broadcast of Ojira today. For those who are not familiar with the broadcast, we have typically 4 broadcasts on a weekly basis. We have Akan Fo Nanasom, ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion on Joda on Monday nights, where we deal specifically with the Akan expression of Nanasom, first and foremost because we are Akan, secondly because of the misinformation being propagated regarding Akan ancestral religion, cosmology, culture, philosophy, and so forth, not only from individuals on the continent of Afuraitkaitnut, but also individuals in the Western Hemisphere, those who have been infected with white culture, pseudo-religions such as Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and so forth. They're fictional cartoon characters who never existed, but also white culture in general. So we deal with ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion, which takes us to our ancestral origins in the Khan land, ancient Kanat, the title of Nubia, where our people originated. We migrated from ancient Khan land after the fall of ancient Kamit and Kanat, northern Kanat 2,000 years ago, reestablished ourselves in the western part of the continent of Afuraitkaitnut, Africa, reestablished the Kanat Empire, or the Nubian Empire, the Ghana Empire. Subsequent to that, hundreds of years later, because of invasion, some of our people migrated further south to the regions of the savanna and forest belt regions in the contemporary regions of Ghana and Ivory Coast, reestablished our Kana civilization in that region, and then centuries after that, some of our people were forced from those regions to West, North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during the Musulo-Kessie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. This is how we ended up in the Western Hemisphere. However, we maintained our ancestral religious practices. The Akan ancestral religion is called Winti in Suriname from the Akan term Quinti. Akan ancestral religion is called Obia in Jamaica from the Akan term Obai. Akan ancestral religion is called Hoodoo in North America from the Akan term Udu, meaning medicine from roots, trees, plant life. It also means to become heavy with the spirit through spirit possession, spirit communication. And as we have shown in our book, Hoodoo People, these same terms can be found in the language of ancient Kanat and Kamit. Looking at the Medutu, the hieroglyphs, you find that the term Udu, meaning medicine from roots, trees, plant life, it also means to become heavy with the spirit through spirit possession, spirit communication. So this is what we deal with on Akan Fo Nanasom, ancient authentic Akan ancestral religion, on Joda Monday nights. On Apinada Tuesday nights, we have Ojira, which means purification. In that broadcast, we deal with ancestral religion in general, not just the Akan expression, but ancestral religion in general, wherever we exist in the world as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people. Ancestral religion impacts every aspect of our lives. We deal with purification. Ojira means purification. We deal with purification of culture, purification of concepts, culture, cosmology, and so forth. In essence, ancestral religion, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut, or African ancestral religion, no matter what form it takes on the continent as well as in the Western Hemisphere, is defined essentially as the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. That means through ritual we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to incorporate in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order, and through ritual we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject in order to restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions. Thus, the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance, these are the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion. We seek to align every thought, intention, and action with divine order every moment of every day as Afurakani people. That is our culture, our way of life. As we execute our function in creation, when we make legitimate mistakes, then we engage the ritual process to incorporate law and restore balance so that we can realign our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order every moment of every day. This is how ancestral religion impacts every aspect of our lives. We thus state that ODWIRA, purification, operationalizes Nanason. Purification operationalizes our ancestral religious practice of ritually incorporating law and ritually restoring balance. So on the ODWIRA broadcast, we deal with the purification, as we said, of concepts, culture, ritual practice, cosmology, and so forth. It was our people maintaining our ancestral religious practices which allowed us to receive the guidance and empowerment from our Nananum Nsaman, for our spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, and the Abosom, the deities connected to us, the forces in nature. We were guided and empowered by them on the best means by which to wage war against the whites and their offspring, massacre the whites and their offspring, and force the end of enslavement in the Western Hemisphere. We wage war against the whites and their offspring through taking up metal armaments and also through the use of chemical and biological warfare, root work being the precedent established by our people in the Western Hemisphere for chemical and biological warfare. So we have that precedent to build upon today through our ancestral religious practice. That's what we deal with on the ODWIRA broadcast, and of course this is a special ODWIRA broadcast. But also we have Wednesday night, Awukuda Afuada Wednesday night, we have Egwa Marketplace, where we showcase Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut African Black businesses, organizations, and institutions, those who are serving the Afuraitkaitnut community in a positive capacity, those who maintain their ancestral religious values in the context of that service to the community. And we have had a number of individuals come on and showcase their businesses, organizations, and institutions, and we will continue to engage that process. And then we also have Yauda Thursday nights, also called Yauda Abada. We have Amain Sim Affairs of the Nation, where we deal with specific issues that are confronting us as an Oman, as a community, as Afuraitkaitnut people in the Western Hemisphere, specifically as ODWIRA Mind, the purified nation, Afuraitkaitnut people in the West. We have a unique approach to culture, a unique approach to nation building, rooted in our ancestral religious values, rooted in the proper notion of what an Oman, what a nation is. An Oman is a living, breathing entity. A nation is a living, breathing entity in the true sense, just as an organ is an entity which is supported by the cells which make up that organ. We are the cells within an organal structure, that Oman, that nation. When we interface with one another in our harmonious capacity, we're also supporting the entity of which we are a component part, that larger entity, that organ is the Oman, the nation, which is governed by specific forces in nature, which we must align with. When we were forced into the Western Hemisphere, wage war against the whites and their offspring, forced the end of enslavement, we're directed by our ancestresses and ancestors to be drawn to a specific region of the Earth Mother's body, coalesce in that region, blend ancestral blood circles, bring ancestresses and ancestors back into the world through those blended ancestral blood circles, interface with the plant life, animal life, and mineral life in this region of the Earth Mother's body, interface with the Earth Mother divinities in this region, interface with the unique expression of the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodoun in this region of the Earth Mother's body, and those influences and confluence of events allowed us to forge a locative identity, a unique expression of Afuraitkaitnut culture and people rooted in our migration and indigenizing to the Western Hemisphere, Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut people, engaging this region of the Earth Mother's body so that we can align with this new expression of energy and so forth. And this is forge a locative identity. Therefore, we have a unique expression to dealing with our issues, how to handle our issues, and this is what we deal with on Online STEM Affairs of the Nation on that broadcast. So I just want to pull up this information real quick. Give me 1 second. I just want to make one adjustment. Okay, so we're going to put some information up, links in the chat room. If you have any questions or comments in the chat room and you'd like to interact in the chat room, you must log in as a user. If you don't have a username, you can sign up one quickly in Blog Talk in order to interact. If you have any questions or comments on the phone line, simply hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. So we want to pull up. We're going to pull up the, we put a link in the chat room to the Okra Bosom, to the publications page where you'll find the Okra Bosom books. And we'll speak from that for a second. Just want to make sure we have that in there. Okay. So some of you have seen we're doing this special broadcast of ODWIRA, of purification tonight, for a number of reasons. Also giving some updates on our activities. But we did post made a couple of posts on Facebook that we would like to go over and go into some detail about. So we're going to pull a couple of those up. Some of you have seen those posts earlier today. All right, and there are people coming into the chat room. So as we said earlier, if you have any questions or comments, just hit the number 1 so we can see that your hand is raised on the phone line. All right. So we made a post called Awoda Ne KRADA, which is birthday and soul day, cosmological differences. We made that post and modified that post earlier today. And so the name of the broadcast tonight is KRADA ADEBISA, which means soul day or birthday divination, divining your own head divinity. So we want to talk about this notion of what the birthday is, the soul day is, cleansing the head, divining the head, aligning with the Okra, the soul, the divinity in the head region and so forth, and why that is key to emotional, mental, and spiritual groundedness and stability. So, groundedness and stability. So, we're going to go to that document right quick. Well, it's not a document, but a post we made, which is basically an article. Awoda Ne KRADA, birthday and soul day cosmological differences. So, we talked about this notion, and because it's my own KRADA or soul day or quote-unquote birthday that's coming up tomorrow, as a matter of fact, it was a good time to address this notion of what a KRADA is. In the Akan language, the word da means day. So we have awoda. Awo means to give birth. So awoda is the birth day. But then we also have the term KRADA, which is the soul day. And of course, when you're born, the day of the week that you're born is the soul day, the day that your Okraa and the divinity that governs your Okraa is most prominent. So each of the 7 days of the week, the reason why we have a 7-day week, there is a 7-day cycle. The movement of the planets in relationship to the sun, moon, and so forth, there's a movement that takes place within a 7-day cycle. There is also what is called a circumseptan cycle, which is a chronobiological cycle where there are certain shifts that take place within the body every 7 days, which is directly related to the movement of the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies every 7 days. So we established this 7-day week tens of thousands of years ago because we're dealing specifically with the deities, with the Abosom, the spirit forces in nature that animate the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies. We communicate with these forces in nature. We become possessed by these forces in nature. We do divination and are guided by these forces in nature. We do that here in the Western Hemisphere, in the Hoodoo tradition, and other traditions. We do that on the continent of Afuraitkaitnut, West, Central, South, North, East, and so forth. And we've done that for thousands of years, ever since those deities first possessed our people. This is where the 7-day week comes from. It is those deities animating the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that we still are possessed by and communicate with and who govern our function in creation. So we took note of that in ancient Kanat, the Khan land, ancient Nubia, and so forth. Some of those Kanat people are ancient Akan people migrated not only from southern and western and north and west of Kamit, in the western, quote-unquote, Libyan desert and so forth, and south of Kamit, but also some of our people migrated from those regions, especially north Afuraitkaitnut, west of Kamit, migrated into the Near East and carried that 7-day calendar with them. And this is why the whites and their offspring, when they invaded first the Near East and southern Europe, that's when they came in contact with that 7-day week. They will later invade North Afuraitkaitnut and East and further on. But at first they came in contact with southern Europe and the Near East. That's when they came in contact with them. They've incorporated that in a corrupt fashion ever since. But they did not bring that to us. We brought it ourselves from Afuraitkaitnut based on these deities. In our multi-book series, Okraa Bosom, Akan Abosom, Deities of the Okra the soul, and the Akan 7-day week from ancient Kamit, Nubia to America, we showcase and prove in detail where the 7-day week came from and the specific deities, male and female Abosom divinities that govern these solar, lunar, and planetary bodies. We show that they're the exact same deities, with the exact same names, with the exact same functions in creation, operating with the exact same planetary bodies, the exact same ritual colors and so forth, and attributes in the Akan tradition as they are in ancient Kamit and Kamit. We show the Medusa, the hieroglyphs, and so forth, and the names of these divinities in ancient Kamit, and show that they still have the same names in the Akan tradition today. And we also show in Volume 1, in the cuneiform script of ancient Sumer, the descriptive titles of these deities of the 7-day week can be found in the Akan language. We're talking about the Sumerian language, pre-Akkadian. These ancient names can still be found in the language of the Akan. So that simply proves that we've always had these titles and so forth. So we go into detail about that in Volume 1. Then we get into this notion of the 7-day week and its significance. And then we start talking about the deities themselves. So, Awoda is the day, Awo, of the birth. And then the KRADA is the day of the soul. And of course, when you're born, your birthday is also your soul day. Your Awoda is your birthday. That's the day you're born. But of course, you're born in your soul. Your Okraa is comes into the world. You come into the world. That divinity is attached to your head region. You have a spiritual force dwelling in the head region. Your head is a shrine. Your brain is a shrine for that divinity. So when you come into the world, you're born on a specific day of the week, governed by a specific divinity. When we're born on a specific day of the week, if someone is born on Benna or the day of the Abosom, the deity Benna, or Abenna the Da, or the day of the Abosom, the female divinity Abenna. Benna is the male name. Abenna is the female name. That is Tuesday. The planet is called Benna or Abenna, the male and female forces. The deity Benna, the male deity Benna, the female divinity Abenna. They're called Herubedeti or Herubedat or Herubeda, which is Benna in Akan, Herubena in ancient Kamit, and Sekhmet in ancient Kamit, Herubedet and Sekhmet are Benna and Abena in Akan. So these are the divinities operating through the planet, so-called Mars, but we call that force Benna and Abena, male and female forces operating through that orb. If you're born on Benna down, you're male, you're called Kwa Benna, meaning a servant or a subject of the divinity Benna. If you're a female, you're called Abena or Abenawa or Abenaba or Abraba, which is Abenaba, and so forth. You're a child of the female divinity Abena. So what you're not simply because you're born on that day, but because when you're born on that day and the Earth's energy is being bathed by the energy of that planet on that day, and it characterizes the energy on the planet Earth and so forth, the way the planet is positioned, its energy is bathing the Earth on that particular day. So not only is that happening, but when you're born on the day within which the planet is being bathed by Benna and Abena's energy, that is an indication that pre-incarnation, when your spirit was in the ancestral realm before you entered in your mother's womb, pre-incarnation, when you were an ancestor or an ancestress, and you were about to be sent into the womb to be born into the world once again. And we are drawn up to Inyamewa and Inyamewa, Amenet, and Amen, the great mother and great father, supreme being, and they assign a divinity to our spiritual head to guide us throughout the course of our lives so that we can carry that energy into the community, into the world. When we're assigned to a specific divinity to govern our heads, pre-incarnation, that means that the Nananom Nsamanfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors of our clan, as well as the deity, the Abosom itself, will make sure that we're born on that deity's day as an indication to the community that we were assigned to this deity pre-incarnation. So when a child is born on Benada, Abenada, that means, and that proves to the family, that this child was assigned to this divinity, Benna or Abena, pre-incarnation, and this is why the child came out on the day that Benna and Abena's energy is bathing the earth, because they were previously assigned. It is an indication. So we're named after the deities. We're not named after the day of the week, as many would say, the day name or the dadin. What it really is a kradin or a soul name. So when you're born on that day of the week and it carries the energy of that divinity, you can call it your avodah or your birthday, but most importantly, you call it your krada or your soul day. It is the day upon which you came into the world, but it's also an indication, because you're born on that specific day, that your soul, your krawa, is connected to the divinity that governs that solar, lunar, or planetary body. The reason why we show the difference between avodah and krada is because when you have a 365 and 1 quarter day calendar, yet you have a 7-day week, then 52 weeks is 364 days. And then that 365th day is the New Year's Day. So, in our calendar. But when you divide up 7 and so forth, it goes into 364, 52 times. But then you have an extra day, actually an extra day and a quarter. So when you go through year to year to year, your birth date will not always land on the day of the week you were born. If you're born on a Sunday, I will see that like myself. Some years, my birth date will fall on a Sunday, but most years it will not. For example, this year it did not. So because it did not fall on the Sunday, then I'll wait until Sunday, the next Sunday, to acknowledge my krada. I'll let a whole year pass. If my birth date would have fallen on a Friday or a Thursday or Wednesday or Saturday or Monday or Tuesday or whatever, then I'll wait until the very next Sunday, the very next Awusida, and that is my krada. A whole year has passed, and then that very first Sunday after the full year has passed is my krada, is my soul day. That's the difference. Some days, some years, your birth date will fall on the same day of the week that you were born, just like when you were born. So the Awoda and the KRADA line up. But most years that doesn't happen. Then we have so that is very key. We have to make those distinctions. Secondly, we also have to make that distinction that the day begins at sunrise, not midnight. The whites and their offspring put forward a calendar where you're starting the day at midnight, you're starting the new year, the dead of winter, in the darkest, coldest time, January 1st, which is foolish. So neither one of those are starting points under any circumstance. The day begins at sunrise, and therefore if you were born after midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, and so forth, before sunrise, that is not the morning. That is still part of the night in the proper calendar, in the true calendar. The new day does not begin until sunrise. In my example, in my case, for example, I was born 12:57 a.m. The whites and their offspring would say, well, that was Monday morning, almost 1 o'clock, 1 a.m. Monday morning. So therefore, I was born on a Monday. But in reality, and that was June 2nd, in reality, the day did not begin at 12 midnight, and then I'm born 57 minutes after midnight. Yes, I was born 57 minutes after midnight, but the new day didn't start at midnight. It was still Sunday night. At 12:57 a.m., it was still Sunday night. At 1 o'clock a.m., it was still Sunday night. At 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock a.m., it was still Sunday night. But then on June 2nd at 5:18 a.m., that's when the sun rose. That's when June 2nd actually began, at 5:18 a.m. Prior to that, it was really still June 1st at night. So I was born at 12:57 a.m. It was not Sunday morning. It was still June 1st in reality. The whites and offspring would say it was 57 minutes into June 2nd, but in reality, it was still June 1st. So if I would have gone along with the white calendar, I would be calling myself Quadjo or Kojo or Monday born and trying to align with that expression of the divinity's energy on Monday, which has nothing to do with me, has nothing to do with my divine function in creation. I'll be out of alignment perpetually. We had to bring this information out here in the Western Hemisphere, of course, because many of our people heard about Akan day names. They were drawn ancestrally to their Akan culture because that's who they are, directly descendant of Akan people brought into America practicing the hoodoo tradition. They learned about the names in the Akan language, about the deities of the 7 days of the week, and the male and female names like Kwesi and Akosui and Esi and Kwajo and Ajua and Abena and Kwabena and Kwaku or Kweku and Akua or Akwia, Yao, Kwao, Ya, Abba, Afur or Afia, Kofi or Kwafi, and Kwame, Kwamena, Ama, Amemeniwa, Ami, Ama, and so forth. These different names of the days of the week, and people said, oh, well, these are day names. Then if I was born on Monday, then I'm a Quadjo or Kojo. If I was born on Tuesday, I'm a Kwabena, Abena, and so forth. So people would just jump on that. But if they were born after midnight but before sunrise, they would make that mistake, and they would be calling themselves by a Kradin or a soul name that had nothing to do with them. Every time that set of sound vibrations was released through speech or contemplated upon, they would be evoking a configuration of sound vibrations that was totally out of harmony with who they are as a spiritual and cultural being. They would be creating disorder within themselves as opposed to harmony within themselves, as they're constantly projecting and receiving a set of sound vibrations or energy that has nothing to do with them, because we were following a white calendar. So we had to bring that information out. We followed that sunrise as the beginning of the day. If I had not done that, I would be calling myself Quadjo or Kojo right now, which would be foolish. We also were able to influence those on the continent of Africa, Afuraitkaitnut, and Ghana, Ivory Coast, and so forth, because many Akan people, millions, have embraced the white Christian inaccurate calendar. Therefore, some of them are celebrating the new year January 1st, which is foolish, and some of them are making or naming their children, giving them the Kradin or the soul name or the Dadin or day name and so forth, based on midnight being the beginning of the day, which is foolish. So many of them have been misnaming their own children within their own cultures simply because they're following the whites and their offspring and creating disorder within the spirit of the child every time they invoke that set of sound vibrations. We know that if you sing to a certain pitch and at a certain volume, those sound vibrations can break a glass. When people play music in their cars, the sound vibrations can make glass shake. You can feel the energy within your body. Sound vibrations have power. They can break something as hard as glass. Through singing, what is the collection of sound vibrations doing to your organs, your tissues, your cells, and so forth? We've cataloged the various sounds, the various vibrations, what effects they have on different organs and the different configurations and so forth as a ritual practice. This is why we have ritual prayer, ritual song, ritual chant, ritual incantation. We have already cataloged the effects of these different sound vibrations, and our names are constructed based on that catalog. What is the specific configuration of energy emanating from us as a unique individual? What collection of sound vibrations are emanating from us as the divine living energy circulates through our bodies? When we attune to that configuration of energy that's unique to our body and our spirit body, that is the enunciation of our true name, and we replicate that with our vocal cords. If we seek to project and imbibe and absorb a different collection of sound vibrations that is out of harmony with us, then we're creating disorder in our system, no different than smoking and pulling in some toxins that don't belong in your lungs, drinking alcohol, pulling in some liquids that become toxic, intoxicated, that don't belong in your bloodstream, but you're forcing it in anyway. You're creating disorder within your body when you breathe polluted air, with smoking and so forth, or when you imbibe or absorb alcohol or other poisonous substances and so forth. Okay, so the call dropped or logs off, drop the call, and that happens every now and then, every few shows, something like that takes place. So if you're in the chat room or on the phone line, if you can quickly hit the number 1 to make sure so we can see, hit the number 1 so we can see if you can hear or not. I want to make sure before we go forward that everybody can hear. The call dropped. We just have to get back on the phone line. So we just want to make sure everybody can hear. Just you can hit the number 1. Okay. Yeah. And then you can hit it again or take it off. We just wanted to make sure everybody could hear. Okay, get out there. So, hold on 1 second. All right. So we were just saying that those sound vibrations have power. Therefore, when you try to imbibe or absorb a collection of sound vibrations that are not in harmony with who you actually are, the construction of your spirit, just like your physical body is unique. Nobody has a body that's exactly like yours. That instrument, your body is an instrument, just like a brass instrument. Different brass configurations generate different sounds, whether it's a tuba or a trombone or a trumpet or whatever. The same person blowing into each instrument, you'll have a different collection of sounds because it's the same air from the same person, but because it's moving through a different instrument configuration, the sound vibrations are different. Your physical body is different from everyone else's on Earth. There's a unique configuration of sound vibrations emanating from you as long as life force energy is circulating through you. The same is true of your spirit body and its configuration. It is unique to you, so the sound vibrations emanating from you is unique. When you introduce a set of sound vibrations within that configuration that are out of harmony with it, you create disorder within that perpetually. This is why the whites in our spring named us English names or Spanish names and so forth, because they wanted us to continuously absorb a collection of sound vibrations that were discordant with our spirits, and we're constantly unstable, whether we're speaking it, hearing it, or contemplating it or thinking about it. So, this is why we take on the proper Kradin. This is why we have to make that observation and correct that, so we're not naming ourselves the wrong soul name of Kradin and thinking that we're involved in Afrocentric culture or ancestral culture, religion, and so forth, and are still being plagued by white culture. That has happened here, but we corrected that. That has happened on the continent to those who have embraced white culture, and they're naming their children with the wrong KRADA and disaligning themselves. So some people who were engaged in that false process came in contact with our work and corrected that, and corrected the names of their children and so forth. So we had to make that okay. Hold on one second. So we had to make that that modification. But then we also made that modification with an observation with regard to the Abosom, the KRADA, the soul day, and the birthday. So we went into some detail about that. So in the particular document, we talked about some of that information. We talked about the nature of the divinity that governs the day. We talked about, we gave the example of my own day, proving that I was born on the Sunday, Awusida or Akwesida, instead of Monday, so I took on the proper KRADA and so forth. And then also, so we talk about certain days of the week or certain years, your KRADA or soul day will not fall on the same day as your Abosom. An example, once again, is myself. I was born on Awusida. This year, my actual birth date, according to the Gregorian calendar, would be June 2nd, but it's really June 1st into the 9th. Either way, June 1st, June 2nd did not land on the Sunday, of course. So even though the 365 and a quarter day cycle was complete a number of hours ago, it's still not Awusida, still not Sunday. So even though this was the Awoda birth date or birthday, the KRADA is what's key. And I won't acknowledge the KRADA or the soul day until tomorrow, because that is the day that the energy of the Ori, the sun, is bathing the earth in a specific fashion. And the Abosom, Awusi, the male divinity Awusi, who is Alsar in ancient Kamit, Awusir, Awusi and Akan, Obatala in the Yoruba tradition, Danbe and Vodoun, and Agwu, Isi in Igbo, and so forth. This divinity operating through the sun in connection with Ra and so forth. Sometimes it's called Alsar, Ra, and so forth, because he's projecting that energy of Ra, utilizing that through the agency of the Aten, the sun, and so forth. Energy is bathing the earth, affecting the earth, and so forth, and it's abundant on that day, and we align with the divinity that governs my head on that particular day. What do we do when we align with that divinity? In the Akan tradition, it's called Okra Guade, or Okra Guadie, which is the Guadie or Guade, the washing or cleansing of the Okra of the soul. So it's the soul washing ritual or ceremony. What we do is typically in Afuraitkaitnut, we will go to the river of our Patrick clan Abosom, or Ntoro, or Abosom, the divinity that governs our Patrick clan. Go into that river, use the waters of that river, stand in that river, use the waters of that river to engage the ritual cleansing, washing of the head, and therefore the Okra, the soul. Of course, the head is the sanctuary or shrine of the Okra, the soul, the divinity dwelling in the head region. Of course, we're not in Afuraitkaitnut, we're not in the sacred river of the Patrick clan, Abosom, and so forth. But what we do over here is we go to a river, a stream, a lake, a body of water, and we invoke the divinity, invoke our Patrick clan divinity, our Ntoro, our Abosom, the Patrick clan deity has been governing our people for thousands of years. That divinity will take up a residence in the body of water that we go to. And once that divinity's energy is taking up residence in the body of water that we go to and we give an offering to that divinity, then we use that charged water of that river, stream, lake, wherever we are, and we use that water to cleanse our head, not only physically but also spiritually. To pull, just like you pull dirt or debris off of your body through washing and cleansing, you also cleanse the spirit body. any negative vibrations, negative implantations, negative projections that you have captured and that have been retained within your spirit body that could influence you and so forth. You get rid of that spiritual debris. So you can create a clear channel of communication and alignment with the divinity governing the head. So we engage that ritual process on the KRADA, the soul day, invoking the divinity of the Okra, the soul, and so forth, after first going to the water, invoking the divinity of the water, the Afurakanu divinity, then invoking the divinity of the head and so forth, cleansing the head, and we engage that process. Now, that is a yearly piece, and it's a larger ritual ceremony, but then throughout the year, at least once a week, we engage that process on a smaller scale, the way we do it here, and people do things according to their accommodations and so forth. But we have a shrine for the Okra, the divinity of the head, and the Abosom, the major divinity of the head. So when we talk about the major divinity of the head and the deity of the head, when you are a spirit, an ancestor, an ancestress in the ancestral realm, it is time for you to reincarnate as Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut people, and our people only. We are first drawn up to Animate, and Amen, the Great Mother, Great Father, Supreme Being. They assign us to a specific force in nature that's going to govern our heads. Once that decision is made, then Amen and Amenet give us a soul, give us a Kra or Krawa. Kra is a male name, Krawa is a female name. It's called Ka, male, Kait, female in ancient Kamit, and Ori Inu, inner Ori or inner head, spiritual head in the Yoruba tradition, the say Lido and Vodoun, and Chi and Evo and so forth. That is a divinity, a male divinity if you're male, a female divinity if you're female. That divinity is directed by Aminet and Amen to go and take up residence in the head region of your spirit body. So that force, that male deity, if you're male, he will come and install himself in the head region of your spirit body. So just like you have a physical entity dwelling in your head region right now that regulates all your functions, your brain, and that entity is different from the heart, it's different from the lungs, it's different from the liver, it's different from other organs. You have an entity dwelling in the head region that regulates all the organs in the body. In your spirit body, you have a spiritual force, an entity dwelling in the head region. It is a deity. It is a child of a greater divinity. That force is directed to dwell with you in your head region and guide you throughout the course of your life. But before that force takes up residence in your head region, it must be infused with a specific configuration of energy. That divinity is infused with the energy of one of the deities that govern the solar, lunar, planetary bodies that govern the 7 days of the week. So if you're going to be born on Awusida or Sunday and you're a male, that means Awusi or Alsar is the major divinity animating the sun through the agency of the 7-day week. So when Aminet and Amen decide that that's who you're going to be governed by, then they direct that small deity, your Ka, that Kra, that divinity, to be infused with Alsar's energy. He is the great divinity. That small deity is infused with Alsarian energy, and now that Alsarian soul takes up residence in your head. The soul that you have, in our instance, it is Kwasi or Kwesi. That means Kwa, Asi, a servant, Kwa, of Asi or Awusi, the divinity Awusi. So that's Kwasi or Kwesi. For someone born on Tuesday, that soul deity is called Kwa, Benna, a servant, Kwa, or subject of the divinity Benna. It's like a miniature Benna divinity, a child of Benna. If you imagine the sun giving birth to a small entity and that little small sun, solar orb sitting in your head, or the planet Benna on Mars giving birth to a smaller red disk entity that takes up residence in your head, or the planet Yao, Jupiter, giving birth to a small or miniature Yao, and that force sits in your head, or the planet Yao, which is Uranus, gives birth to a miniature Ya, a child of female divinity with that greenish hue, that force that dwells in the head region of the female on Thursday and so forth. The great divinity who operates through one of the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies gives birth through the agency of Amen and Amenet to a smaller divinity, a child that takes up residence in your head region. That is your soul. That is your Kait, your Kra, your Krawa, your Ori Inu. That deity in your head region is a child of the great divinity of that planet or lunar or solar body. My Kra, or my soul's name, is Kwasi or Kwesi. That is his name. The deity in my head region, his name is Kwasi, or a servant of Asi. He is a child of the great deity Asi or Asar. Somebody born on Tuesday, they have a divinity called Kwa Benna dwelling in their head region. That is their soul's name. That Kwa Benna, that miniature Benna, is a child of the great deity Benna who animates the planet Mars, who is Ogun in Yoruba, Ogun in Vodoun, and Benna in Akan, and Heruba Dat in ancient Kamit. He is a child of that divinity, and he's dwelling in the head region of somebody born on this day. And the same is true across the board. So that KRADA, or that soul day, is the divinity, or the day upon which we come into the world. It's a sign that we were assigned to a specific divinity, and so forth, and that deity dwells in the head region. So we have a shrine for the Kra, the deity in the head region, but for us that doubles as a shrine for the great Kra divinity, the Kradin Bosom. For example, my shrine, my Kradin Bosom, Nkomre of Kradin Bosom shrine, it is a shrine for the deity that dwells in my head region, Kwasi or Kwesi, and he is a child of the great Asi or Awusi of Asar. So my shrine doubles as a shrine for Awusi Asar, as well as his child Kwasi or Kwausi or Kwesi, the deity in my head region. Notice that the soul name is really the soul's name. The divinity in your head region has its own name. Abinah, which is a female born on Tuesday, Kwabinah, which is a male born on Tuesday, and so forth. That's the soul's name. And of course, your spirit body, you have your own name. My name of my spirit is Ra Nehem Ptah Akan. But my soul's name, the deity in my head region, his name is Kwasi or Kwesi. And because he dwells within my head region and regulates my functioning in creation, I can be called Kwesi as well. But it's really my soul's name. So we have a shrine for that divinity every 7 days, at least once every 7 days, at least on Awusi Da or Kwesi Da or Sunday. I'll engage the Okra or soul washing ritual to cleanse the spiritual head and the soul and so forth at the shrine of the Okra and Kradin Bosom. After I cleanse the head and so forth, I can sit down and communicate clearly with that divinity in the head region, find out what I need to be engaged in, what thoughts, intentions, and actions are in harmony with divine order, what things are out of harmony with divine order, what direction I need to go in specific areas of life and so forth that are most harmonious, and so forth. And I also communicate with the great divinity Awusi, the divinity Asar, who governs my crop, and so forth. So at least once every 7 days, at least every Sunday or Awusi Da, I would engage that process. If a female is born on Wednesday, Akuada, she will go at least once every Akuada or Wednesday to communicate with the miniature Akua, that miniature divinity in her head region, as well as the great Akua divinity who governs the planet Mercury. She's called Nebet Head in ancient Kamit. She's called Agberu, the wife of Eshu in Yoruba. She's called Koni Koni, the wife of Legba in Vodoun, and so forth. So this is what we have. So once every 7 days, we engage the soul washing ritual for purity, purification. But then every year on the KRADA, we go out to the river. And that doesn't mean you can't go to a river throughout the course of the year as well. But this is just the way we do things typically. But every year, specifically, especially, you go at least once a year out to a great river for a more extensive soul washing, Okra, water, and so forth. Now, Hold on one second. We just want to make sure. And once again, if you have any questions or comments on the phone line, simply hit the number 1. If you have any questions or comments in the chat room, you must log in as a user in order to interact in the chat room. Okay, so those are the modifications that we were talking about. The difference between the Abosom, the birth date, and the KRADA, the soul day, difference between the time of the 24-hour cycle that we acknowledge as the beginning of the day, so we have the proper KRADA, the proper soul name, and so forth. This is what we're dealing with. So then we get into this notion of Adebisa or divination. Divination in the Akan language, Ade, or Ade means thing, object, deed, or entity. Bisa means to inquire, to ask. Adebisa means things that are inquired about or asked. That is a term referencing divination, communicating with the forces of nature, the Abosom, the divinities, as well as the Nanano Instrument of the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors by direct blood circle, inquiring of them or asking questions or learning directly from them so we can align our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. Now, every time you engage in bisa, to inquire, or an inquiry, every time you seek to know something from the forces in nature, from the Abosom, the deities, from the Nanano Instrument of the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, from Nyamewa, Nyame, the Great Mother, Great Father, Supreme Being, anytime you engage the process, have the desire to know, and you invoke or evoke the deities or ancestral spirits, you are engaged in an oracular function. You're seeking to align yourself with that information, that dispensation of energy and consciousness from the divinities and the ancestral spirits. That is an oracular process. So it is incumbent upon us individually as adults to divine our Ori Inu, inquire to that divinity as to what we should be engaged in every moment of every day. That force in nature, that divine force in nature in the head region should be guiding our thoughts, intentions, and actions. When we are being pulled in the head region, that force in the head region, you can feel pulling you in one direction to a certain thoughts, intentions, and actions. When you are pulled in that direction through the course of everyday life, every moment of every day, then you need to align your thoughts, intentions, and actions with that divine force in the head region. The more we engage the ritual Okraa soul washing process and become more attuned and receptive, then we will experience the communication of that divinity in the head region, not just as a pull or a nudge, but as direct communication with that divinity. Will communicate with you audibly, communicate with you visually so you can see him or her, and so forth, and in numerous different ways, a variety of ways. So it's not just an urge. It's a communication, a direct communication. So when you engage that process of communicating with that divinity, then your behavior begins to reflect that communication. The more receptive you are, the more in alignment you become, the more easy it is to align thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order and not be controlled by lust or malice and so forth, or this misguided desire and so forth. So when you engage that process, you're engaged in inquiry. It is our ancestral obligation as adults. It's important that we engage that process. We start that process by giving our children, here in North America, we give our children their KRADA Abosom shrine, the shrine for their Kra, on their 7th KRADA or their 7th birthday. So they can go once a week, do a head cleansing, and sit down and communicate or listen to that divinity for a few minutes from the time they're 7. And they engage that process from that point on. So, so that's just showing that it is our responsibility. You're not dependent on going to a priest or priestess to find out what's going on within your own head unless you have some major issue. It is our responsibility to communicate with the divinity who governs our head. It is our responsibility to align with that force in nature that governs our head and learn who that divinity is. No priest or priestess can give you a divinity and install a divinity in your head. That is only done by the Supreme Being, pre-incarnation, and you are born into the world with the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodoun, that you came into the world to carry. Nobody's giving you or assigning you deities. That is misinformation. It's never been true. Some people use people for money, tell them they're going to give them this pot or give them this shrine or give them this or that because they're trying to get money out of the individual. Sometimes they're doing it out of ignorance because that's how they were trained. That's how their quote-unquote elders and eldresses were trained intergeneration. But it's inactive. People can acknowledge the divinity that's in your head. Someone can do divination and will acknowledge who the divinity is, but they're not giving you anything. It's no different than if you know who your mother is and you communicate with your mother on a regular basis. You know who she is. You grew up with her, you communicate with her, you know who she is, you know how she is. If someone else came from the outside and communicated with her and she said, yes, I'm his mother, that's just an acknowledgement. They didn't make the person your mother. And it is your responsibility to know who your mother or your father is, or grandparents are. It's your responsibility to align with the deity that's in your head region and divine with that divinity on a daily basis, on a moment-to-moment basis. This is our responsibility. So we engage that process of adebisa or divination specifically for that purpose, to learn who that divinity is, how we are to align our thoughts, intentions, and actions with that divinity. We learn the nature of our spiritual configuration energetically, so what kind of power we have from the patriclan and matriclan sides, not only the DNA we receive from the mother and father and what kind of phenotype we'll have and attributes and attitudes that we'll have and the kind of character we have, but the energy complex that comes from the patriclan side, the energy complex from the matriclan side, how it's unique, and how they converge and support the energy complex and are regulated by the energy complex of the deity in the head region. So we have a divine ahinasa or triangle. In the head region is the Krawa, the soul. The right and left corners of the triangle are the patriclan and matriclan divinities, energy complexes, as well as the ancestresses and ancestors of those clans and so forth. And they support the apex of the triangle, which is the Krawa, the soul, the divine consciousness. So that is our structure. So we engage that soul washing ritual on a daily basis, on at least a weekly basis. Sometimes when people get into a situation where there's some discordance or some issue and so forth, and they need more clarity, they may engage that soul washing ritual not just once in 7 days on their KRADA, but 7 days in a row from KRADA to KRADA, to completely cleanse themselves so they can be receptive in a surgical, kind of operation, so to speak. So this is what we're dealing with when we talk about, we mentioned in the information for the broadcast, this notion of emotional, mental, and spiritual stability and groundedness. All forms of emotional instability, spiritual discordance, mental instability. We're not just talking about if someone had a brain injury or something like that, but when people have mental instability, emotionally unstable, spiritually discordant, at the root is some measure of disalignment from the Okra, Okrawa, because the Okra or Okrawa is a divinity. It is an anchor in divine order. It's divine, dwelling in your head. When you align with that divine force, then your thoughts, intentions, and actions are also in alignment with that divine force. That means they're in alignment with divine order. When you veer from that, then you manifest disorder. You can manifest physically because of the thoughts and behaviors lead to overeating and obesity or undereating, malnourishment or drug use and so forth, making bad decisions. But it can lead to emotional instability, mental instability, spiritual discordance where you're plagued by the projections of other individuals and so forth and being drawn by negative discarded spirits as well as the negative projections of living individuals and so forth, not being receptive to the Abosom, the force of the nature, and the Nananom Samanfo, the ancestresses and ancestors of your direct blood circle was spiritually cultivated. So first and foremost, we want to align with the divinity in the head region, with the Okra, with the Ori Inu, with the Lido, with the Chi, and so forth. That is key to our development. That is key to ancestral religion. Everything in ancestral religion revolves around what is your Kra telling you to do, because what your Kra is telling you to do is what Amen and Aminet, the great father and great mother, directed that Kra to tell you what to do. So if you're in alignment with your Kra, the soul, the deity in the head region, you're also in alignment with Amen and Aminet, Nyamewa, the great mother, great father, supreme being, because that is how they have designed it. You're also in harmony with the Abosom, the forces in nature that regulate order and creation. If you're in alignment. If you're out of alignment with them, with the divinity in the head region, then you're out of alignment with the forces in nature, and you manifest all kinds of self-destructive occurrences in life until you go back to that ritual process of realignment, receptivity, and so forth. So those are the things we wanted to touch on in this broadcast. And also, when you look at the Okra complex, the soul of Akan Fo, you'll see that we go into some detail about that process. In the KRADA Abosom books, Volume 1, Volume 2, we go into detail about that process. So you'll see those details. Now, we also, when we're talking about Adebisa or Divination, we want to get into some of that information as well. But first, we want to take a couple of calls on the phone line. If you have any questions or comments on this subject matter, dealing with the nature of the soul day, the birthday, that whole notion of ritual cleansing of the head and so forth. If you have any questions or comments, you can hit the number 1 on the phone line. Also, what we put out today, when we put out that article, we put that particular article out to discuss that piece. We also put out another article the previous day as along the same lines. We were giving some more truth to read. We talked about this whole notion. We went into a little bit of detail, and this happened, of course, as we say in the article, 21 years ago. The way we came across that observation, that proper notion of the whole notion of the day, proper day of the week, beginning at sunrise and so forth, is because of my own situation. When I found out about the names in the Akan language of the days of the week and so forth, and of course, Black people in North America, we continued that process of the day naming ritual process. We didn't always know the fluent Akan language, but we still maintained the descriptive titles and so forth. But when I found out the Akan language itself and the names of the days of the week and the names of the planets and so forth, and they talked about the Dadin or the soul name, and they also call it Kradane, then the first thing I did was look up what day of the week I was born, looked it up on a calendar. They said, oh, you were born on June 2nd was a Monday. I was like, all right, well then let me look and see what they're saying about a Monday-born male. And I looked at some of the attributes and so forth, and it was limited information, but I looked at some of those attributes. And of course, my own Kra told me, no, you're not a Monday-born male. That doesn't align with you and the divinity. Awusi, who governs my Kra, Awusi in operation with the Ra, operates through Sunday. Awusi or Alsar, in operating through the moon, operates through Monday as Ajo. When Alsar is operating through the moon, he's called Ajo. When he's operating through the sun, he's called Awusi or Asi, Alsar Ra, and different things and so forth. It's a different energy output. I'm connected to Alsar as he operates through the Aten, the sun, and that fiery energy, not the moon, not Monday. I don't have that function or that responsibility. I have the responsibility of Alsar operating in concert with Ra and dispensing that fire energy. So when I'm reading about a Monday-born male, my Okra automatically rejects. This is over 21 years ago. Yet everything I was reading was saying the same thing. I went and came in contact with certain elders and eldresses and asked them about this whole notion. My Kra directed me to look at ancient Kamit, the 12 hours of the night that Ra sails through his boat in the underworld, and then at sunrise he changes boats, becomes a hawk or falcon-headed divinity and sails through the 12 hours of the daytime in the sky, and then the sun sets. He changes boats and becomes the ram-headed divinity and operates through and sails in the underworld in the 12 hours of the night. They showed me through the cosmology that sunrise is the beginning of the day. That goes back thousands of years and is written into the cosmology. Then I looked back at a Sunday-born male and the few attributes that they had listed because they didn't know much, the different sources that were out, still fit exactly the nature of my function. So then I took that information to some elders, elderesses, and so forth, and they were like, well, no, you're born on midnight is the beginning of the day, so you're a Monday boy. They're telling me that. What I'm reading is telling me that. Every source I went to, everywhere I went to was telling me, no, I'm a Monday boy, but my own Okraa said, no, I'm not. I'm a Sunday boy. So I didn't follow what the misinformed elders and elderesses were saying, didn't follow what people had published and so forth, and that includes some Ghanaians who published information about their own culture. I didn't follow what they said about their own culture. I didn't follow elders and elderesses who turned out to be misinformed and so forth. I followed what my own Okraa said, and I took on the name of KRADA ADEBISA, and of course eventually going to court and going through that process to change the name through all legal documents, driver's license, bank account, and social security card, and everything else. I would find out years later by an individual who had been going back and forth to Ghana and got involved in their expression of ancestral religion and spent years there at certain tribes and so forth. Years later, I asked that individual, by the way, in Ghana, it's amongst the traditional people, not amongst the people who become brainwashed with Christianity and Islam and so forth, but amongst the traditional people, do they determine the beginning of the day at sunrise or at midnight? And she said, no, of course, it's sunrise. So, of course, my people told me years prior that sunrise is the beginning. So listening to your own Nananon Insamafo spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors and the Okra, the divinity in the head region, I was given the proper answer, of course, took on the proper KRADA, and that, was a divinatory process. So we went into some detail about that whole process and story and this other document that we put out. And then we also talked about the time of day and the sunrise and everything else in this particular document. So we put out those two documents over the past couple of days, modified one of them and put the other one out over the past couple of days, and people have been studying that and reading that and so forth. And it's dealing with this notion of self-divination, self-inquiry, learning directly from the divinity in your head. That is your ancestral obligations simply as an adult. You don't turn your head over to somebody else to examine. You communicate with the divinity in your head and become grounded in that. And all people can do from that point on, priest to priestess, is simply acknowledge what you already have. That also ties into this notion of divination. And, of course, some of you are familiar with the reality that we've been working on our film on divination, African-American ancestral divination. It's called KRADA ADEBISA Ajumadi, African-American Ancestral Divination Project. We've been working on that over the past year. We started the filming process finally. We started that in April, and we started that filming process in Kissimmee, Florida. Wrapped up the filming in the state of Florida. Then we were just in New Orleans this past weekend. This last weekend, not only for our Kait Soul of Hoodoo and Voodoo retreat with Glenda LeVeaux, but also after the retreat was over, we did filming in New Orleans for that segment of the film. We also had a filming date in Georgia that we had to reschedule. We'll be back there, also in Ohio, Virginia, Mississippi, Alabama, Chicago, and so forth, and we'll be wrapping up. So our goal is to wrap up the filming piece within the next 7 days. We have received a number of notifications on Facebook over the course of over the past couple of weeks. And you probably received these notifications as well. When it's coming up on your birthday, and Facebook knows that, they keep sending you these notifications talking about would you like to donate to a charity for your birthday, or put a charity forward so that people can see that for your birthday and, give to this charity on your birthday. So we're going to use our Sacred Soul Day, the day that that we are aligned with, because the divinity that governs the soul, lunar, planetary body governs that day. They use their energy through the earth and so forth, and we come into the world on that particular day because our Okraa is aligned with them. We're going to use that sacred measure to then give funds to some white charities to support our enemies, the whites and their offspring. That is absurd. That is ridiculous. Of course, but we keep getting these notifications that we've seen some of our people, putting forth these white donations or white organizations and giving donations, giving funds to fund our enemies and so forth. So, of course, we keep receiving these, at least once a day over the past few weeks, and then we put this notification out not only about the Soul Day and the KRADA, but this year is a special year because we're working on the film. So we ask individuals, instead of donating to a white charity, we're asking people to donate on this KRADA, this Soul Day, this birthday for our film. We have reached 73% of our crowdfunding goal over the past year, and we just hit 73% yesterday. We went from 72 to 73% yesterday. So over the past couple of weeks, we were at 71%, and we went up to 73% yesterday. We are seeking to complete the process by the end of the next 7 days, so we do need assistance from the community in that process. So we've had 138 people over the past year who contributed to our crowdfunding effort. So what we're asking is, if you have not yet had a chance to contribute to our effort, we're in the final push for the film. We have a couple more states to travel to the film in, and then we have to go through the post-production process. All of this travel, as well as the equipment and so forth, is expensive. Well, once the film is released, it will impact our people greatly. If you have benefited from our books, all 30 of our books are free downloads from the website. We've had over 55,000 downloads of our books over the past 12 months. We have now 340 broadcasts that people download and learn from and so forth. We have our Kumasa program where people overcome drug addiction and so forth through ancestral religion. If you have been impacted by our process, take the time now while we're live, or even if you're listening, people will listen to the podcast later, but if you're listening now, if you've been impacted on this KRADA, please go to the crowdfunding site to assist us to reach that 100%. We have had over 70 weeks, about 138 people contribute. That means about 2 people per week. At the same time, we have about 1,000 to 1,100 downloads of our books, our free books, every single week. That's why we had over 55,000 downloads of our books on a regular basis, and we have thousands of people on our platforms like YouTube and Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and so forth. So, yes, many of the people just, follow people just to get a number of followers, get a number of likes, to make their channel or their platform have a number of people. We have, of course, there are people who do that, but then there are some people who actually value the work that we do. The only way we can, get the work done is for those who actually value the work to support the work. If we value, then we support. The whites and their offspring understand that. So when we spend our funds with the whites and their offspring every single day, we give money to some white business every single day, we're showing that we value them. And they understand that, so they don't care if we're upset in the store, we call the manager and all this other stuff. They know at the end of the day we're giving them our money. But if you value the work that we are doing, any contribution is helpful, so please take the time now to contribute. We always, post that information. Sometimes people share the information, but still, on average, we had about 2 people per week over the past 71 weeks so far. We have thousands of people who always communicate with us, and we've had numerous people, shout us out for the birthday today and so forth. We have people emailing us privately on nearly a daily basis telling us how impactful the work that we've been doing has changed their lives and so forth, and how they've downloaded all the books and things like that. We have numerous people per week, not just 2 people per week, but many, many people per week. We've had hundreds of people communicate with us directly of how our free books and programs and conferences and so forth have impacted them positively. So if the work has impacted you positively, please take a few minutes now to go to the page and contribute to our crowdfunding effort. We're 73% of the way there, and we want to get to that 100% so that we can continue and release. The goal is to release the film by the end of June. And the only way we can do that is to reach that 100% and so forth, so that we can cover all the expenses and get all of the work done. So again, if you value what the work is and it has actually impacted you in a tangible fashion, take a few minutes now to contribute to the effort, and we appreciate that. We're going to get on the phone line. Michelle on the phone line, number 7732. You had a question or comment? Number 7732. Okay. On the phone line, number 281. You had a question? What's up?
Yes. I guess happy Earth Strong today. Yes. I didn't catch most of the broadcast, but I take it is going back again about soul cleansing and divination again, like you talked about in previous broadcasts.
What? Say it again. That last part I couldn't hear you. Say it one more time.
Soul cleansing and purification, like in previous broadcasts you done, like you going back to for tonight, talking more about it again. Was talked about before in regards to how you came up in awakening.
Right. And showing the differences between the proper observation with regards to what the soul day actually is, when it begins, the nature of the divinities associated with that in the proper time, and this notion of divination, communicating with the divinity yourself so you can align your thoughts, intentions, and actions with order.
Okay. Well, I was calling just to say happy Strong. See you right there.
Okay. Yeah, I'll say we appreciate the call, appreciate the support.
Yes.
And we can also just want to make sure, just check on the chat room right quick. Okay, so there's a question in the chat room. People in the Ifa tradition, which is the Yoruba tradition, it says, I'm assuming you're saying that it said, I cannot know who my head is without a divination from a priest or priestess, and that I cannot speak to or honor any Orisha without being initiated to those Orishas. So that is 100% false, 100% inaccurate. We come into the world with our own craft. Those divinities communicate. That divinity communicates with us on a regular basis from the time we're children. They show themselves to us and so forth on a regular basis. It is our responsibility as an adult to learn about that and so forth, communicate with that divinity. All a priest or priestess can do is acknowledge what's already taking place. In the Akan tradition, for example, as soon as the child is born, people already know exactly who the divinity is. Every group has its own manner in which they determine who's who. People can find out from their mothers, fathers, grandmothers, grandfathers, and so forth. It's become popular in certain traditions to do a divination for a child after a certain number of days, whatever their piece is. But as adults, we have a responsibility to communicate with that divinity. Number one, we can always communicate with the divinity that governs our head every moment of every day, wherever we are. We can always communicate with the divinities that govern our patriclans and matriclans on a daily basis, on a moment-to-moment basis, wherever we are in the world. That is our birthright. If someone is talking about initiation, if you have a function to become a healer or a healeress or a diviner and so forth, and you need to learn how to use your specific power in a certain way, in the fashion that people have learned and so forth, and they can show you how to do that. That's an initiatory process, but to communicate with the forces of nature that actually govern you, that's totally inaccurate. Some people say that out of ignorance because that's how they have been misinformed intergenerationally, not only here in the Western Hemisphere, but also on the continent. We know that you'll find how Islam, Christianity, other fake traditions have infected the Yoruba tradition, infected the Akan tradition, infected the Vodoun tradition on the continent of Afuraitkaitnut, as well as over here for those who have fallen into those corruptions. And then they weave these corruptions and these false ideas into the fabric of their practice. And over the course of a couple of centuries, it appears that the corrupted practice is the original practice. And they can say, well, my mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, great-great-grandmother, great-great-great-grandmother, great-great-great-great-grandmother, going back 6, 7, 10 generations, practice like this. But yes, the 10 generations only takes you back 200 years, and that's when the corruption began. 20 generations would take you back 400 years. That's, when the corruption began. So you can go back 1,000 years. And 1,000 years ago, we were up in the Empire of Ghana, and we began to migrate away 1,000 years ago because Muslims were invading and corrupting, and some of our people didn't want to participate in the corruption. So if someone says, well, we've been practicing like this for over 1,000 years because this is the authentic culture, 1,000 years ago, we were actually moving away because of corruption. If you say 2,000 years ago, we were leaving ancient Kamit because Greeks, Romans began to invade, and some of our people began to corrupt the tradition and produce, foolish ideas and aligning with the cracker, embracing Christianity, later Islam, and so forth. Corruption is manifesting in different places over the past couple of 1,000 years. So just because someone says, I'm on the continent, I'm living in a village, and this is the way it is, that doesn't mean anything. Reality is reality. Corruption is corruption. But the reality is you communicate with the divinity in your head daily, every moment of every day. You communicate with your non-anomalous Samantha, your spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors on a daily basis. And Patriclan and Matriclan divinities on a daily basis, and that's in every tradition. So that does come up a lot because there's just misinformation out there. Okay. Can we go back to the phone line? Can you chill on the phone line, number 6277?
Hey, heads up.
That's up.
Heads up. It's Ianaila. Hello?
What's up? How are you doing? Yep, can you hear me?
Okay. How are you? Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure you could hear.
Yeah, I can hear you fine. I don't know if you could hear me. Thanks for doing this, Madaka, for doing this show, and as we would say in Yoruba, Odunde, for your celebrating your solar return. So the person who had the question about Yoruba 5 traditions and knowing your Ori, if I could just sort of dovetail off of what you said. So yes, you might go to a diviner, and that doesn't necessarily mean that person is quote unquote initiated. Diviners don't necessarily have to be initiated by what we consider initiation on this side of the world or in contemporary time. But a diviner might go to a diviner to ascertain what Orisha is your guardian, not what Orisha rules your head. Your Ori rules your head. That's what Ori means. Ori selects head. So your Ori sanctions other Orisha of divinity to guard your path. So we would say your mother and your father, or your head and your feet. So your Ori is separate from your guardian or lineage Orisha. So they're not the same thing. So when you go to a house or a diviner or a priest or priestess or whomever, Ajibono, and they say, Obatala rules your head, Sango rules your head, Yemunja or Ya rules your head, that's incorrect. The only Orisha that rules your head is Ori. Ori is an Orisha, all by itself. So all we can do is get clarification and affirmation of what other divinities walk with us. And when it's initiation, you might get what they call that Orisha will, they say the Orisha will be placed on your head. That's also incorrect. That Orisha may sit beside, if you will, or work alongside of your Ori, but they do not govern, rule, or sit on your head over your Ori. And so that's real clear about that. And those of you who are going out there and getting work done, whether it's me or Candomblé or Santeria, which is, as Brother Quasi put out in another broadcast and journal, that's even incorrect and false, made-up word for that's part of our identity. But it's also, so when you're going and they say, you're going to find out who is your head, that's incorrect. But the main thing is that you have ask who your mother and your father is, or ask who your head and your feet are, because you cannot live Ifa, Yoruba ancestral tradition, and not have a mother and a father, a guardian, a mother, a guardian Orisha, and a male guardian Orisha, a father guardian Orisha. Just like you have a mother and a father who will bring you into this world, have a quote-unquote mother and father guardian Orisha as well, if that makes sense. And that also doesn't mean that other Orisha aren't a part of your path in your life, in your spirit. So I hope that, whoever asked that question is still listening and heard that and any other folks. So what I wanted to ask specifically was, so when folks, especially in Ghana, like yourself, are born between midnight and sunrise, are given the incorrect KRADA, then what's the solution to that? Other than, I'm obviously conscious people will, and dedicated people will go and change their name, but how do we correct that, prevent that from happening, or, what is the person to do when they find out that they have been invoking the incorrect day name, your soul name, basically.
So you're saying what would we appreciate the you bringing the clarification in the Yoruba tradition. And she had a question, so I'll send her your information. But so she said, who is the sister speaking about Ifa? She had that question in the chat room. So on Facebook, Naila Sankofa, and we also you see Naila because we did a broadcast. Yeah, Naila did a broadcast here on the Echo Marketplace show. So you'll see her link on our page as well. But you can go directly to Facebook, Naila Sankofa on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
Naila Sankofa Akinyemi on Facebook. Akinyemi is AKINYEMI. So, but even if you first Google, search Naila Sankofa, you'll see it pop up. Naila Sankofa Akinyemi. Okay, so she had that question. So, but so when you're asking, so the people who, how do we correct it, and what happens when the people have the wrong Pradine. So the way we correct it is just, we put that information out. Now, there's two things going on. Of course, the people over here who are trying to find out the specific names that they're used in the language of, in the Akan language, because once again, as we showed in our Okra and Abosom books, our people maintain the 7-day week and the praise names of the 7-day week. And even when we didn't know how to speak Akan fluently, you'll find people practicing hoodoo tradition in North America. All of their children will have the proper Pradine, either the proper name itself or a praise name of, like, for example, Afua or Efua or Afia is, a Friday-born female connected to the divinity Afia and so forth. But one of the praise names of a Friday-born female is Effie. So people who are born on that day, they could either be called Effie or Afua or Afia and so forth. And the person here born in the hoodoo tradition, the Akan tradition in North America, they may not know how to speak Akan language fluently, but when they see the child and tune to the spirit of the child and the child's Okra, they say, well, I'm going to call this baby Essie, and that's what they do. Or Essie is a female born on Sunday, and they name their daughter Essie, or, the different praise names like Joe or Jojo on Monday for the divinity Ajo and Ajuwa and so forth. So every single day of the week, whether it's the direct name or the praise name, we have all of them. We continue to use them, give them to our children based on communication with that divinity here in North America. But for the people who want to learn the Akan language, and they study that a little bit, or they get some book or some chart, and it says, the Akan people name their children after their days, and then some black nationalists or Pan-Africans say, hey, I want to take on an African name, or I feel drawn to the Akan, and I'm going to use their system, and they don't realize we maintain the system, then they're going by, like we originally would assume, if it's Monday, they assume it must be, midnight. And what we did was when we started off on that process, like we said earlier, Okra showed me it was the other way around. And we corrected ourselves before taking on the wrong name. So what we ended up doing is we shared that information. We published an article on it first, and over 10 years ago we published it as an article, and we put it on our website, and thousands of people downloaded that article. We've received, communication from Ghanaians thanking us for that. Now, of course, there are some people in Ghana who didn't embrace the white Christian calendar or the Muslim calendar, and they know sunrise is the beginning of the day, and they go by that. And so they continue to do it correctly. And they also know that if you take on the wrong Pradine, you're introducing a collection of sound vibrations that are discordant with your spirit, and you create problems for yourself no different than if you eat foods that you are naturally allergic to and so forth, and you're wondering why you're getting sick, but then your brother or sister, the same mother and father, but they eat the exact same food you ate, they're fine, but you're allergic to it. And the mother and father just say, well, you're all our children, so everybody eats the same thing. They're not acknowledging the fact that there's a difference with you. So it's the same thing spiritually. The ones who practice the tradition, at least in that aspect, without the white influence, they know that, and that's why they do it correctly. But you have a large percentage who've embraced white culture, and they don't. So when they got our information, or came in contact with information on the continent, but if they came in contact with ours first and so forth, what they ended up doing, the ones who were sincere, recognized the reality, and they changed their name or changed the name of their children instantly. Of course, you have some people who are, they're still controlled, emotionally unstable, and part of that in trying to invoke the wrong energetic complex will promote emotional instability and immaturity, and it will just magnify that or amplify that. So they will want to pretend like, well, no, that's not true. They don't know what they're talking about, and I've been doing this for so long, so I'm just going to keep doing it. Well, they're too embarrassed to say I've been using the wrong name for all these years and telling everybody and so forth, so I'm just going to keep on doing it. And that's just immaturity. That's nonsensical. So,
right.
And they continue to have that instability. But the ones who are sincere and normal and not, emotionally unstable, they recognize what's true, and that's all they care about, and they change the name. I would have been using Quadjo, but if somebody showed me that was inaccurate, I would change it immediately because I'm only interested in what is accurate, and if I saw I made a mistake, I'm going to correct it. So, but we put that out front, and of course we put it in the books and so forth so people can get a proper understanding. Right now, the only books out about the Okra, Abosom, the deities of the 7 days of the week, the only publications talking about that anywhere in the world is our book. There's no books on the continent where they're breaking down who the deities of the 7 days of the week are. So we're the only ones doing that. So when people want to find out about that, invariably now, since the books have been out for a couple of years and we still have other sets in the volume coming forward, volume 3 is coming out very soon. When people Google that kind of information, our site pops up, near the top. So people are starting to get the right information.
Right. So when you're talking about basically they're consciously used to acknowledge the correct information, or just don't get it, that existence is, when we're talking about Okra or Ori, is that someone being really truly, spiritually, culturally, intellectually hard-headed. And then those folks who walk around with the incorrect KRADA, or even, and going back to the sister's question again about the incorrect Orisha, or government of your house and so on, and we just say, your head, then they have to come back into those of us who are diviners and healers and the elders in the tradition who do the spiritual work. We've got to turn around and do all of this work to bring that balance back, and or erase. And so it's just really, really just important that we know what we need to know about and do the work, the personal spiritual work with our Okra and our Ori from the beginning.
Absolutely. Right. It's just started off with that, and with people's, people starting off with their unknown Samanfo, their Egungun, their ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated. That starts off the process because they're the ones who establish the culture and maintain the culture and perpetuate the culture, and they know exactly what's going on. So therefore, when we come in contact with false information, we already have an immune system there to protect us from that. So we don't fall into this notion of, just because someone has some titles or they're on the continent or they're somewhere else and they've been doing this for years or generations, that they must know what they're talking about. We deal with our Insamanfo first, and whenever we come in contact with individuals, if they're not saying, if what they're saying or teaching or doing does not comport with what our own, Insamanfo or Egungun, direct us to do, then we reject them because we only follow our own people. So our people are the standard, not somebody from the outside telling us, what they think something is. And we typically come into this like with a brainwashed mentality, like a church trying to join a congregation, and whatever the pastor says must be true because he's, God is with him. So we put that same foolish mindset on certain priests and priestesses and organizations and so forth, and then when they're flawed, we just embrace the flaw and try to rationalize the flaw. And we need to, eradicate that whole mindset and get back to normal.
Right, and then also not deal with priests and priestesses from Christianity in the first place.
Right.
So, whether their authorities are right or wrong, it's like get out of the nonsense, get away from the nonsense.
Right.
And then we won't have to worry about that. But it's also, getting to that point where you got to recalibrate your core belief system. How you were raised and indoctrinated is just like brainwashing ourselves and stepping into that. And another thing I'll add, and I'll let you go, is when we talk about doing the work with our Ori or our Okraa, is especially from the Yoruba Ifa side of it, but also from the Akan side, in other traditions, ancestral traditions, is they're getting up every day and venerating our Ori, praising our Ori, our Okra. The first thing we do before we even put our feet on the ground or before we start doing anything part of the day is to praise your Ori. And there are specific Oriki, specific prayers and invocations for that that are in Yoruba and in English, and obviously, and you have the ones in in Tree. So that's another part of that work, and then calibrating ourselves, recalibrating our, starting off every day, realigning and calibrating our Ori to our physical bodies as well as the energies that we're going to carry with us throughout the day. And especially the important thing about what you said about, washing the head on your anniversary of your Kradin, that's really, really essential. And obviously throughout the year, but especially on those days. Because what's the first thing what happens with us when we're born? We come out head first, usually, and then we're washed. And the first thing that's washed is the head.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And that also goes for, we're talking about the Yoruba tradition, Akan tradition, but every tradition. So no matter what it is, so if people are, studying the language and culture of ancient Kamit, and all we did was migrate from different places. So migrating from Kamit to West Afuraitkaitnut to South is no different from somebody migrating from Mississippi to Chicago. And some people stayed in Mississippi and some people stayed in Chicago, but they're the same people in different locations. So studying what the Ka in ancient Kamit, the soul, or the Kait, it's the same thing. And most people have been misinformed with regards to what the Ka is, because the white Sonara Supreme would say the Ka is just the spirit, and it's really not. It's the soul, it's the divine consciousness. And as you know, back when people started really, there was a new upsurge in interest in, say, the Yoruba tradition in the early 90s, and people started writing books and stuff like that, and they became very popular. And along with the rise of black bookstores, another upsurge in the rise of, Afrocentrism and, conscious rap and stuff like that, people started, flooding these black bookstores, and many of them started opening once again. And there are a number of Orisha books being published, and it just, just out of nowhere, all these, mainly the white Sonara Spring, but some of our people publishing these books and talking about the tradition and so forth. In the early 90s, as this upsurge was coming forward, this notion of talking about the Ori Inu, they weren't talking about that at all. All they were talking about was, the Orisha, and they were talking about Babalaos. And it was Ifa-centric, Babalao-centric, and some of them were more Oborisha-centric, and that was it. And nobody was talking about the Ori at all, because it wasn't lucrative, because they knew that if people were communicating with their Ori like they should be, and a lot of them would be losing a lot of business. And it's the same thing in the Akan tradition. Nobody was talking about the Okra at all, really, period, other than saying it's the spark of life, which it is not. And some of them still would say that until we publish our book, exposing what the Okra complex is. But it was not lucrative to talk about the Ori, so nobody knew what it was, and this whole notion of an Ibori shrine, they act like that was some very unusual thing that only a few people needed if it was a major problem. But in reality, typically every single person would have a shrine for their Ori. Everybody. That was just a normal thing. And the same thing in the Akan tradition. Everybody would have an altar or a shrine for their Okra until it became unpopular with the rise of Christianity and so forth. So that notion of communicating with the Head Divinity was just diminished. And it's only, later in the so-called 2000s that people started really focusing on the Ori and talking about it more. And we started talking about the Okra and pushing it, trying to get people off of this, Ori or Okra-less approach to tradition, which actually the whole tradition revolves around. There was a shift.
Right. So glad that you said that, because the other side of it too is that not only could potentially not be lucrative for them, but also it could call you out, because back then in the 90s, the 80s, the 90s, especially even the early 2000s, you mentioned Ori, well, you might barely get Ori mentioned except in just basic terms and practice. But the in-depth overstanding of Ori, no one had it. I mean, so I think that it would also have called folks out, or I saw it call people out who really didn't overstand. These so-called initiated folks didn't overstand like what Ori actually was. And then it would also call them out on what you aptly termed the $5,000 and $10,000 haircut, because if you were made to the wrong, head, your head was made to the wrong Orisha, then you've already paid for, your $5, $6, $7, or even maybe $3,500 for your initiation, and you're made to the wrong Orisha. Your head is made to the wrong Orisha.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just that shift. So people putting out the accurate information, and the people who are sincere, which is the majority are, when they come across accurate information, that's all they're concerned about. And it's the minority who's trying to preserve their position and don't want anybody to know that they don't know what they were talking about, they never knew. So they'll try to perpetuate misinformation just to preserve their ego, which is just a measure of their insanity. They exist.
Or they intentionally do. Or they intentionally make people to the wrong head. I mean, I know some folks who have, especially some brothers, who were not only, you talk about your Kradim, but, within most our ancestral traditions, we usually receive a name, a new name, either that we walk around with every day or one that we use in private amongst our Egbe's or Ile's or Ophies and so on. And you have brothers who are given names, anybody actually, male and female, but especially in this particular case, you have brothers who were given names to diminish their manhood. Or because you have, folks who are running a particular house and saying that, my Orisha is jealous. So, and what that translates to is I'm jealous, I'm selfish, and I'm the only one who can be a priest or priestess of Shango, for instance. And so no one else, and folks who actually, their path, their Ori has sanctioned their path to belong to and be co-governed by Shango, they get made to a Batala or some other cool, what we call a cool deity, a cool Orisha. So so it's just really, really important that folks concentrate on until you find, because we all have to learn this tradition. Our traditions are new to a lot of us, especially when you're coming into them in your 30s, 40s, and especially your 50s or even 60s. And I know some people who came into ancestral tradition in their 70s and 80s. We have a lot of catching up to do. There's a lot that was lost, and there was also a lot that was transformed and correctly, properly, justly transformed because we're not on the continent anymore. And so, and our traditions are a communal tradition. So it's not like, because I don't even like the word practice, but we live our ancestral traditions in community. And so we actually, no matter how knowledgeable you are, no matter how familiar you are, we cannot live our traditions alone, especially when we're doing the work to protect our nation or aspects of our nation, our black nation. And that begins with Okra and Ori and any other terms that represent our spiritual inner head.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate the show, and and we'll talk soon. And congratulations on the retreat in New Orleans, and whatever, and the next ones. Anything else that's coming up, but especially on the film project.
Right up there. Yes, we do have. In fact, 3 weeks from tomorrow, we're having the ODWIRA Afashe, the OGNMI conference, Purified Nation conference dealing with nationism, nation building here in D.C. So we're gonna mention that. But yes, that's the very next thing coming up. But then, yeah, we're working on finishing the film.
Right. Okay, well, I will let you go back to the show, and appreciate you taking the call, and as always for doing this. Ekushea.
Okay, gracias. Okay, so we have a few minutes left, and we have another call we want to take. Just want to make sure we didn't miss anything in the chat room. All right. So once again, we have, let's take this call real quick. Michelle on the phone line number 3497. You got a question or comment?
Yes, I have a question. It's in regard to the head. Like the information I received was actually from someone who I know who practices, but when I told the person, like my birthday and time I was born and stuff, that my Orisha pretty much told me was Obai through the Ifa, Orisha system, and I wanted to know like what book or systems could I use to do they have some type of chart or something, or some kind of book that has a chart of like the Orishas that govern you by your birthday, and like the herbs and things rituals you use with those Orisha, because I want to be able to study it independently, and even though it's not that I don't trust the people or person that I got information from, it's just I like to be able to obtain information myself, See.
I understand. So now, just to make a distinction, every different group has their own approach to ancestral tradition based on where they've migrated to and so forth, and how they've interacted with forces in nature. So everybody doesn't use the 7-day week or naming process. So, for example, in our Akan tradition, that's the agreement that we forged with the Abosom. So that's the way they send us into the world as an indication through that 7-day cycle. For example, Igbo people, they have a 4-day week, and they have names associated with those 4 days, which is different from the 7-day cycle. The Yoruba people have a 5-day cycle that they use, but they don't have names associated with the 5 days. They don't have just day names associated with the 5 days. They approach or, name their children based on other ways of getting to the same result. So it's not, if somebody's in the Yoruba tradition, or if that's their ancestry, they wouldn't be using the 7-day week in the Akan tradition, because the Yoruba have their own agreement with the forces in nature, with the Orisha, about how they would name themselves and discover what their names are. Just like the Akan people have their own agreement, just like the Igbo people have their own agreement, and so forth. So, in that sense, the forces in nature themselves are the forces in nature. You have the oceans, the Earth Mother, the sun, and so forth. We're all impacted by them when we're communicating with these same deities. They have different names and they're different traditions, but we're still the sun is still the sun, the Earth Mother is still the Earth Mother, fertile as well as barren. The ocean is still the ocean. The spiritual forces that animate them are the same ones, and we're all communicating with the same ones. We just use different titles for them because we have a different language. But the manner in which we relate to them is different. Just like a fish needs water and a lion needs water, to survive. But the manner in which they relate to water is different. So the fish is underwater and they, get oxygen through their gills, but the, lion is, on land and will drink some water. And they can't try to switch cultures or just decide if the lion tries to operate like a fish and get the same energy and the same substance that they need to survive the same way a fish does, they'll drown. So we deal with the same forces in nature, but the manner in which we relate to them, our ritual approach, is based on the agreement that we have. So it wouldn't be like an Akan person born on, Sunday is connected to Awusi's Obatala and Yoruba tradition. That doesn't mean that a Yoruba person who was born within the 7-day-week cycle and it falls on a Sunday that their divinity is Obatala, because that's not the manner in which, or the agreement with which the Yoruba have to learn who's their, or they don't deal with that 7-day cycle in the same fashion. So they will find out in a different way. But it starts off, just like Naila was talking about, we were talking about earlier, dealing with your own direct Egungun ancestresses and ancestors to get the clarity, because they're with you on a regular basis, and dealing with your very own Ori, with your Ori Inu, the divinity in your head region, to learn directly to confirm who that divinity is, and she will show herself, numerous times in numerous ways, numerous confirmations, so over time you'll be 100% sure. There are numerous books. I can't say one particular book that has, a specific chart or things that I could just recommend off top, because there's a lot of books out there. Some of the information is good, some of it is inaccurate. So you just have to read between the lines on different things. But if you go into a black bookstore with Yoruba tradition and the books written by our own people, because there's a lot of books written by the whites and their offspring, but look at the books written by our own people and look at the books, even in the index, what do they have to say about Christianity? What do they have to say about the whites and their offspring? What do they have to say about homosexuality, bisexuality? If they can't, answer those questions properly, then you have to, read between the lines to see where else they're compromised. But there's no one book I can say. There are some books, for example, Chief Farmer, some of the books, information in her books are, good foundational information. Of course, you still have to read between the lines. Before I go forward, there's about a little over a minute left in the broadcast as far as online. If you want to listen beyond 11 o'clock, you must call in on the phone line within the next minute, because the online version will cut off. So the phone number is 646-787-8155, 646-787-8155. If you can't stay on beyond 11, and we won't go too much longer beyond 11, just a few minutes, then I'll take the tuning into the broadcast. As we said earlier, please go right now before anybody forgets through the crowdfunding effort. We're trying to get to that 100% of our crowdfunding goal so we can complete the filming process in the next 7 days. So if you have not had a chance to support in the past, and you send a shout out for our KRADA birthday and so forth, please go to the site. Any amount that you contribute is helpful, and of course, if you would like to receive some of our books in return for your donation, of course, put that in the comment section. We can send those out. But please support the crowdfunding effort. Just take a couple of minutes to support that now. And of course, yet I'll say we thank you for tuning in and supporting. Okay, so yes, so Chief Farmer is one of the, an author who has a few books out. You can even look at John Mason's books. Everything in his books are not accurate. He's talking about the Lukumi tradition. But he has a number. He has Ori Inu with songs of the Orisha from the Lukumi tradition, or, 4 New World rituals that they have, or certain books about, ritual food and stuff like that. Black gods, Orisha studies in the New World. Every single thing in there is not accurate, but you can get an idea about, basic things with regard to the Orisha. So there are a number of different books out. You just have to basically read between the lines. There's no one that I could say is this is the one that's accurate and the other ones aren't, because there's a lot of, misinformation out there. The equalizer will be your own ancestresses and ancestors when you communicate with them on a regular basis. They give you that kind of clarity, and they'll direct you to people so you can come in contact with people who have some good information. And, of course, sitting with your own Ori, the divinity in your head region.
Well, I definitely feel like they've because I've always had my ancestral altar up. I've had that up for a while, And I think when I spoke to you before, like over the phone and stuff too, I kept saying, I kept feeling like a strong connection to the Yoruba, the Nigerians, because I kept attracting, Nigerian friends. I worked with a lot of Nigerians. You know what I mean? And we seem to click or whatever.
Right.
And for some reason, I keep feeling a pull towards this tradition. I got a reading with someone, and they did a reading for me, and they said that, they kept seeing me in all white and that my ancestors would be appeased if I practiced, the Ifa religion, that they would be appeased by that. And not too long ago, yesterday, I got my results back from the DNA test that I did from AfricanAncestry.com, and it came back that I was Yoruba. And the person who did my reading, told me that before I got the DNA test. So that was very interesting. I'll that's I feel like that's a testament to what you said, that if you pay attention to your ancestors and your divine consciousness, you'll be revealed stuff. So
right, exactly, and that can that can happen. And it started off, like you said, with you communicating with your people first. You had to alternate for a while, and then they put you in position to keep coming across people on a regular basis, on a consistent basis, which simply, acknowledge what your own people were telling you from the beginning. So, and then you get more clarity as you continue to go to them, and they'll, direct you to some information, even sometimes because there are books out, but then, another source of information beyond just people who have published books is when you Google information specifically for people, for example, who have done like a thesis or some kind of paper or dissertation on the Yoruba tradition that's rather recent, and it's not out in book form, but the whole dissertation is online. So maybe they were at the university of, a university like one of the universities in Lagos or something like that, or Ile-Ife or something like that, and they were writing on a specific aspect of the Yoruba tradition, or, for example, the Ori or something like that, and they published some extensive paper where they were going out in the field and communicating with, people who've been practicing for, a while outside of the influence of Christianity to see what they had to say. And they have some research that has not yet come out in book form, but it is online, and that would be more valuable very often than some of the books that you find out. And it'll typically be more detailed, in certain avenues with regard to the culture. So you may want to check out that kind of information as well.
Okay, so you said Google the Ifa religion and read up on research papers from people from Nigeria.
You'll find even not just there, but you'll find that if you Google dissertation or Orisha or Yoruba religion or Ifa religion or Yoruba spirituality dissertation or something like that, you find that there have been, over the past few years, a number of individuals who are, trying to obtain a master's degree or a PhD in philosophy or, certain religious studies or something like that, and they published some dissertation on some aspect of the Yoruba tradition, the Orisha tradition. And it's the only place you will find it is in, online, but it's not published in a book yet. So some people just look for books on Amazon or some black bookstores, and whatever books are out, that's all they check out. But then there's a lot more information that's not been published in books yet, and some of it is much more detailed. So you can get, and you still have to read between the lines, of course, and see what the researcher was doing, but you still get some more detailed information.
Okay, yeah, because as far as the books, the only two books I was thinking, when I do get a book, I was thinking it should be something that's written by someone, in the Yoruba tradition who practices, who's actually African, because, like you said, there's a bunch of white people, and also Latinos who write on it, and that, their information, I definitely feel can be biased. Two books that I've considered is The Way of the Orisha and Power of the Coconut. Are you familiar with those two books?
The Way of the Orisha is written by a cracker, so there's a lot of misinformation in there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
What was it? Right. What was the name of the other one?
Power of the Coconut.
Who wrote that one?
Well, it was a brother. I do know when I looked at the author, it was a picture of the author, and it was a black person who looked Nigerian.
Okay. But then you still have to, you got to read between the lines with them because some of them are very Christianized and they'll introduce biblical nonsense either directly or covertly into their analysis of the tradition. So, but yeah, Way of the Orisha is written by Philip Niemark, which is a cracker who's misrepresenting the culture. Has been misrepresenting that for, years, trying to infiltrate the culture for years. So, as you go through, look who the author is, get an image of the individual and see what their background is, see what their agenda is, what are they trying to promote? Are they trying to promote interracialism or homosexuality or, integration within the tradition and stuff like that? If you see any of that popping up, it's going to be a lot of misinformation, a lot of biased, information. But check out Chief Sama, John Mason. You can even get some information like Ifa Will Mend Our Broken World by Wande Abimbola. You have some of the information in there is accurate. Some is not accurate. He's married to a cracker. He's a Nigerian, but married to a cracker. So, it's a lot of corruption. But then there are certain things linguistically and ritually that you can read between the lines and get from some of his work as well. He has Ifa Will Mend Our Broken World as well as Ifa Literary Corpus, things like that. So, but I would check out some of those research papers, dissertations as well.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for the information. I'll, be checking out those books.
Okay, no problem. I'll say
all right. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Okay, so I think we have one more call on the phone line. Michelle on the phone line, number 7732. You had a question or comment? Okay. So, so we're going to end the broadcast here. So it's a little bit after 11. So, once again, I'll say for tuning into the broadcast, and once again, please support our crowdfunding effort. We can definitely reach the 100% mark, even just with a small number of people, even just the people who have logged into the show tonight. That group of people contributing to the effort now will get us, even just a small group that's listening online on the phone line now, that small group is enough to get us beyond even 80% instantly. So if you can make a donation to the crowdfunding effort, please do so now to assist us in our work. And we appreciate that. We appreciate all of the KRADA Soul Day wishes and so forth. And, of course, tomorrow is that day for us. So, again, we want to say Yedate for tuning into this special broadcast of ODWIRA and Yebesha Bio. We will meet again. What's up?